It's Super Tuesday in the United States, the biggest day so far in the 2024 electoral calendar, when states across the country choose who they think their party's nominee for president should be. 15 states from Alabama to Alaska and one territory, American Samoa, are going to the polls. The race is already dominated by two candidates, President Joe Biden for the Democrats and his predecessor, Donald Trump, for the Republicans. The former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, is Donald Trump's last remaining Republican challenger. Let's bring in Brandon Bohrn. He's a political analyst with the Bertelsmann Foundation's Europe program. Welcome to the show, Brandon. All eyes on the U.S. today. How is this Super Tuesday being viewed in Europe?
Well, from where I'm sitting in Brussels at the moment, the earliest polls to close are going to be in Virginia and in Vermont at about 1 a.m. this morning. So in reality, Europeans will be waking up to the news that Republican candidate Donald Trump is on his way to this party's nomination. This news is not necessarily surprising, but it's jarring nonetheless. For a couple of reasons. We now see that a Biden-Trump rematch is basically set in stone, and the potential of a Trump 2.0 is very serious, especially when you look at the head-to-head polls that have been released this week that show Biden behind. This would have severe implications for the United States, for U.S. domestic policy, for the federal government as we know it, but for Europeans, it would have severe knock-on effects as well. When we think about trade policy, security policy, you look to the comments that were made recently by Trump on NATO and questioning U.S. commitment to that organization. When you think about the ongoing war in Ukraine and U.S. aid that has been so vital to Ukrainians and to Europeans over the last 2 years. So this will literally be another wake-up call for Europeans come tomorrow that difficult days could be ahead.
Now, Brandon, some analysts suggest that Americans have kind of forgotten what it was like under President Donald Trump, that their views of him have improved since he left office. How much of a disadvantage do you think it could turn out for Joe Biden to be the incumbent?
Well, that's really the main issue that Democrats are facing at the moment. Joe Biden is experiencing historic levels of unpopularity among presidents. Joe Biden is not the preferred candidate among Democrats, who would prefer someone who brings more vitality, more liveliness. If you look at the polls, if you look at the primaries in Michigan, last week we saw 13% who voted uncommitted in that election. These are warning signs ahead of the election later this year. This is a very different election year than 2020, when we saw record 65.7% voter participation. Polling suggests that 85% of those who voted for Joe Biden last time around are not planning to do so this time. These are very concerning figures for Democrats leading into the election.
Yeah, there is another important event in this week's calendar. Joe Biden will address Americans on Thursday in the State of the Union. What do you expect? How will he use this address to make his case to voters?
The State of the Union address is pivotal this year. This is an especially important platform, considering now the race is pretty much set. It's likely that we'll see a rematch against Trump. Now, the interesting thing about this State of the Union is his words, his plans, his policies will not be as scrutinized as much as his general disposition. How does he carry himself? His older age at the moment is a major issue among voters, and people will be watching. So the focus will especially be on his disposition. The focus, especially within his campaign at the moment, is going to be on preparing Joe Biden to project clearly, to project confidently, because otherwise this could be a setback for him on such a large national stage. And, especially now that the election season is going to heat up soon, he needs to project that he'll be able to take it on.
Yeah, we don't have too much time, but I do want to touch on Nikki Haley for a second. She still is in the race for the nomination. It's not looking good for her, frankly. What is her strategy here, you think?
Well, there are a couple things at play. For one, she could technically stay in the race through the July Republican National Convention with an eye on the 91 felonies spread across 4 criminal cases that Donald Trump is facing. Maybe something sticks, who knows? But that is a calculus. Of course, there is a risk there. She is slowly becoming persona non grata within her party. This could have implications for her political career down the line, considering she's only 52 years old. But in all intents and purposes, even though she will continue the race potentially after tomorrow, it's likely that she drops out at some point in time before May. It's unclear.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, for example, in 2016 stayed in the race through May. But in all likelihood, she will still endorse Trump, but she'll likely wait until it's officially confirmed at the latest at the Republican National Convention in July.
And we'll have to wait and see. That was Brandon Bohrn. Thank you so much.
Benjamin Alvarez Gruber is standing by in Denver, Colorado. Benjamin, good to see you. What can we say so far about Super Tuesday?
We're indeed waiting for results. As you mentioned, there are several states with several different time zones, so all of them will not close, of course, at the same time. We're in Denver, Colorado, public station close to a public library, a polling station where people are coming in. They still have 3 hours. Here in Colorado, the polls close at 7, and then we will get the first exit polls. But what's quite interesting, they even have a place where you can drive by with a car, drive through, to give your ballot and to tell who you want to see as your presidential nominee. Super Tuesday, usually traditionally known as a very important, the most important day of this election year. This time it will be not that surprising because we only have practically 2 candidates who have the possibility of then getting the nomination. On the Republican side, Donald Trump. On the Democratic side, Joe Biden. But the 2 important things to look out here is what the margin will be between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, and also how many voters will vote uncommitted, criticizing President Trump's Gaza policies.
All right, Benjamin, so few surprises expected here. Those 2 things you mentioned to look for, but does Super Tuesday really tell us anything about this election that we don't already know if both Trump and Biden are poised to win big?
What will be interesting will be to see how Nikki Haley will react. On her homepage, there's no public event scheduled today. The big question is, will she drop out today? She said that she would stay in the race until Super Tuesday. That's happening today, but we know that she's not even close to the number of delegates that Donald Trump already has. In Michigan, we had more than 100,000 voters voting uncommitted, criticizing President Biden's Gaza policy, and that definitely rang some alarm bells in the White House. That will be interesting to see if that criticism of his policies there and the way he's dealing with his Israeli counterparts is actually getting more criticism in the states that are voting today. But as you said, no big surprises expected today here on Super Tuesday.
I want to go back to those protest votes for Biden. Is there anything significant to them? We've seen them before in Michigan, as you mentioned. We're seeing signs of it already again. But could this be something that really threatens something bigger for the president? Or is this sort of a kind of side act to everything that's going on?
They definitely need to take this seriously. We had Vice President Kamala Harris a few days saying that a ceasefire is needed for at least 6 weeks, and that might also be in answer to those 100,000 people in Michigan that said that they prefer to vote non-committed instead of voting for President Biden. We can see that pressure will increase. We can see that that's also definitely a topic when we speak to voters, to see that for them, many of them saying that they criticize it completely and then would go either for non-committed instead of voting for President Biden. But we need to see how this falls out. There's still many months ahead until the November presidential elections. We have both conventions too, the Democratic and also the Republican convention. A lot can happen until there, but the question now will be, what will Nikki Haley do if she drops out? Will she endorse Trump, something that seems unlikely, or will she just drop out and said, I tried it, but it did not work out?
All right, our correspondent Benjamin Alvarez Gruber there from Colorado. Thank you.